Hello class, today we're going to discuss chapter 10, Global Atmospheric Changes. In this lesson, we're going to satisfy the following objectives. 1. To distinguish between weather and climate. 2. Explain what determines the Earth's climate. 3. We'll try to list down the main greenhouse gases. And 4. Describe the enhanced greenhouse effect. We will also discuss the potential effects of global warming and give examples of strategies to mitigate and adapt to global climate change. We will also try to describe the importance of the ozone layer. So if you're ready, let's get started. So first, we're going to differentiate weather and climate. And here's a very good video to illustrate
Because
this.
so many
Let's
people
watch.
seem to confuse climate with weather. The world's climate is not the same thing as the weather. But what does that mean? What exactly is the difference between weather and climate? Mostly, the difference is time. Weather is the set of conditions in the atmosphere at a specific location at a specific time. Weather changes day to day, hour to hour. But climate describes the average conditions in an area over a long period of time. Climate changes over decades or centuries. And it's not just time though. It's also area. Weather is sometimes different just a few miles away. But climate is often used to describe whole regions of the planet. Here's an example of these differences. What's the weather like in Timbuktu, Mali? Well, the answer depends on when you're watching this video. It might be hot or it might be cool. It might be sunny or cloudy. And it might even be cooler in one part of the city than another. Timbuktu is located in the Sahara Desert. Now, what is the climate of the Sahara Desert like? Well, that's easier. The Sahara has a hot, dry climate. High atmospheric pressure combined with a tropical.
Okay, so that video, we'll try to break it down. There are two main things. Okay, it would be time bound. Weather is very specific. Okay, it's on a shorter time frame like day to day. How's the weather today? How's the weather this hour? Whereas climate is more on a longer time frame. Could mean decades. Okay, and also more geographically um, very specific. So I think you have by now have known by heart the difference. We have discussed this also in the previous lessons, weather and climate. But they are, of course, highly related. Okay, so weather here is a very given time, and we would always be having, of course, the weather forecast. That's why we have the weather forecast on a day to day. You would know if there would be um, weather disturbances. Whereas the climate, we don't have the climate forecast, right? We only have the weather forecast. But we are aware of some issues like the climate change. Climate change should be referring to more longer time frames. Okay, so we have here global climate change. Next, okay, we'll be talking about the major greenhouse gases. So here's a list of the major greenhouse gases. We have water vapor. We also have carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, ozone, and the CFCs. CFCs would mean the chlorofluorocarbons, okay, and other halocarbons. So of course we know that these greenhouse gases has something to do with the phenomenon of climate change, and that's when you would be looking at the weather now being elevated on the topic of climate change. So this illustration will help us be reminded as to the greenhouse effects and how it occurs. So you have here when the solar energy coming from the sun would be basically um, creating a condition, okay, and these conditions are bizarre, wherein we have, okay, the gases, atmospheric gases would be trapped, and in a way would be making some kind of heating effect. So here we have some solar radiation reflected back to the Earth's atmosphere, And of course, you know that the ozone layer has something to do with that. The thinning of the ozone layer definitely has something to do, okay, with the greenhouse gases, creating some kind of, okay, a bizarre effect, and creating therefore anomalies, okay, specifically of course what we know as the warming effect. Okay, the analogy that we would always be taught here would be how the greenhouse and the Earth's atmosphere in the occurrence of the greenhouse gases would be like being in a car. Okay, para kang nasa sasakyan mo, try to close the car, and then you park your car in the middle of the parking lot, and after an hour or so you would enter your car, and okay, you would be toasted. Okay, so that is the analogy that uh, we would always be uh, given. Of course, you know that on the effects of climate change, you would have some catastrophic effect on the loss of natural resources, threats to life and property, some health effects, and of course changes in the natural habitats and the food supply. There would also be some changing in the ocean chemistry, or what they call the acidification.
Right. Here's ABC's Kana
So,
Whitworth.
we have climate
This year's
change.
deadly wildfires and monster storms, terrifying signs of things to come. According to tonight's dire new assessment from 13 federal agencies, government scientists warning the impacts of climate change are intensifying. Climate-related threats to Americans' physical, social, and economic well-being are rising from coast to coast. President Trump, who
So every once in a while, we would be seeing on the news how climate change is getting to be more serious, and the global attention that is needed on this serious issue is intensifying, given the fact that, of course, we all live under, okay, this one big Earth, and of course, there has been some political debate as to how different the world leaders should confront this, and it will now lead us to the question of mitigation. Okay, mitigation of this climate change definitely um, would be depending so much on the political will of the world leaders. So that when you talk of climate change, it is not just an environmental issue, and we have been telling you this. It is also very much a political issue. So as we go through the list of how, okay, the baby steps to the big steps, how mitigation can be done on the issue of climate change. We have here on a personal level, for example, when you drive less, okay lang sa atin kasi sa kamobil naman tayo, di ba? But again, in developed countries, um, uh, wherein the transportation, the consumption, okay, would definitely be very high. This is where the link between more developed countries, okay, actually having to commit more on the reduction of energy use by driving less. That would mean less cars in the first place. Okay, increasing efficiency, for example, by switching to hybrid cars. Elon Musk, okay, Mr. Iron Man would be um, anticipated to be a major player when it comes to producing, okay, not only hybrid cars but electric cars. And on a greater arena, okay, talking about politics, and the world leaders, okay, should be imposing, or kunyari yung mga uh, organization, okay, the great eight countries should be looking at carbon taxes. Okay, sana ma-impose na tong carbon taxes, or what are the um, debate now in terms of the imposition of these carbon taxes. Definitely China should be on the forefront of this one. Okay, planting and maintaining forests is definitely tree planting has been on a very, very, those are the classic mitigation moves. Anybody can plant, okay, a tree, but it takes a village and the whole country and a global collective measures to maintain the forest. Okay. So carbon management, and dyan po yan. Okay, this should also be on the national scale, wherein you have, okay, carbon management, or what are the plans, what policies are connected to carbon management. Siyempre, the carbon taxes actually is part of that. I don't know if the Philippines does have some carbon management policies. Okay, wala pa yata tayo dun. The use for technological innovations that efficiently trap, okay, carbon dioxide from smoke stacks. In other countries, we do have innovations like this, and I think I remember a Japanese kid. Okay, let's try to see if we can, okay, investigate on this. Okay, I have found a Japanese boy.
Still only a student, may have a solution.
HIASI is an innovative machine which removes carbon dioxide from the air directly to avoid global warming. I realized that instead of simply focusing on zero CO2 emissions, it was better to capture CO2 and make the amount negative.
With AI functions that allow it to hold conversations, this machine is popular among children and encourages them to think about global warming.
I think that this machine will be a trigger to change individual consciousness. I will make 7.5 billion HIASI and spread it all over the world. 今日の二酸化炭素の回収量は
3.5 リットルだよ。
So, ayun, ang galing, no? What a kid. So he discovered, okay, a way to capture carbon dioxide and try to eliminate, okay, this from air. It's really amazing how technology and some brain power would really try to show some promise. Okay. So tayo kaya, I hope we will be having more initiatives like this coming from, there's also one from India, but just to give you an example, that this initiatives from the young people, and it's very inspiring. Hindi lang si Greta, no? Eco warriors would also come in many different forms. We have Greta, we also have this Japanese guy, and who knows? So I'm posing the challenge. Ano din kayang maimbento ninyo? Okay, kaya ba natin na mag-invento o kaya mag-advokasya ng para sa ating climate change? Moving on, okay, we also have more on the list, mitigation strategies. Okay, if we can have some replacement on the coal-fired power plants with renewable energy sources. Of course, that would be eliminating coal-based into renewable energy sources, and insulating buildings to reduce the need for heating. We are not so dependent on heating technologies because of our climate, and we don't have winter. We do have some dry winter for December, but I don't know, with the crazy weather and climate change now, it's really hard. But anyway, technologies to reduce the need, okay, and in the emission of this carbon, of this greenhouse gases. And okay, we also have the improvement and management of agricultural soils. Okay, another thing that would be important in a discussion of the climate change mitigation would be trying to check, okay, what's going on with the ozone layer. And this is like the portal. It's a it plays a very huge part. And so we have to find out ways also to protect the ozone layer from being depleted. So let's take a look at this last video on the status of the ozone layer. Let's check it out.
This year, the ozone hole over Antarctica was far smaller than expected. In fact, it was the smallest since the ozone hole was discovered, the result of unusual weather patterns in the stratosphere over the South Pole. The ozone hole is caused by interactions between chlorine from chemicals called chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, and ozone. Although CFCs were banned by the Montreal Protocol in 1987, they last a long time in the atmosphere. Ozone depletion is enhanced when temperatures are colder, so the ozone hole fluctuates with the season, appearing during the colder austral winter months and disappearing by summer. It reaches an annual maximum size in early southern spring, usually in October. This year, the polar vortex, a spiraling wind pattern over the South Pole, was unusually wonky. This warmed the stratosphere, the part of the atmosphere with the ozone layer, which significantly slowed down ozone depletion. Although the small ozone hole this year was caused by weather patterns, the ozone layer has shown overall signs of improvement as a result of the Montreal Protocol. NASA and NOAA have worked together to study the ozone hole since its discovery.
So ayan, that's the update on the ozone layer. The Montreal Protocol is just one of the many initiatives, of course, from Canada, who is so strongly politically willed to really stop and ban, okay, it's only one products that would be emitting CFCs. Halimbawa nga yung, alam natin na yung spray net, kaya nga ngayon wala nang spray net because it actually emits, okay, this, CFCs that would really be, in a collective way, try to deplete. It's only one example, no? Of how these chemicals can deplete the ozone layer. And so ano yung implication dun sa video na nakita natin? What does it mean? So the ozone layers, there are times and there are months when it's really, but the hole is still there. Okay, October now, but there are also ways and there are signs that the ozone layer, okay, can actually be mitigated. Okay, kumukonti daw siya, and we hope and pray, however, and we hope and pray, and probably if you would have another reading during this pandemic, probably the signs would be promising. Kasi nga yung mga factories, ganun, nakita natin ang daming reports from around the world that even the smogs have cleared due to lockdowns, economic lockdowns, okay, freezing of the industrial activities. Well, when it's bad for the economy, it's probably good for the atmosphere and the ozone layer. So ayun, no? So we have here, the bottom line of this would be that the ozone layer is still very thin, and if we can find some ways and means to mitigate the depletion of the ozone layer, that would be very promising. So that we need to really remind ourselves that we only have one ozone layer, and this is not renewable. So this we paying the tax for Earth is not something that we could renew. It has a timeline. Okay, so we really need to take good care of this ozone layer. Okay, and it says here at the global level, the alarming rate of the ozone depletion has, okay, prompted governments to develop, and that is why until today it's still being pushed on a global political agenda. And so we hope and pray that the world leaders, okay, are including, and we are now really getting feel that the climate change is one of the top agenda of the world leaders as they try to talk of what's best for economy and what's best for the world. So that's it. We are now at the end of this module, and you would expect some assessment coming up in our Google Classroom. Thank you very much for listening.